So, hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to episode 2 of George's Jungle, and I'm back here with my good friend Anthony.
Hey everybody.
And he's waking up.
Halfway there.
Halfway there. I'm a little tired too. Went out and played some disc golf. Are you familiar with disc golf?
Yep.
Yeah. We played this morning, and man, it's such a beautiful day outside. That I couldn't resist being out in the nice cool air, but then it warmed up, and it was a great day to play. We spent a couple hours out, me and Chance and Darren and Logan, and it was good to be able to throw some. So I hear that you recently got a baby grand piano.
Yeah.
So do you play?
I play at it.
It's not just furniture, is it?
It's the decor.
Oh my goodness, that's a nice piece of decor.
I come play for it one Sunday.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll push Darren to the side. So, hey Tiffany, how you doing? Miss seeing you guys. I hope y'all are doing all right. And please tell Carlos and everyone else we said hi to. So yeah, well, I'm sure you know the song that everybody knows, "Heart and Soul." You know the dun 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 dun.
I know the song.
Oh my goodness, that song like drives me crazy. Working at camp, it's the only song that every kid knows. Everybody knows that song.
I don't know how to play it.
Yeah,
I learned it.
And so I'm just like, we would, all of us literally having to hear that song hundreds of times every week at camp. It would just drive you insane. So let me see, what are you saying there? It's actually,
I can't see it either.
oh, Mason. Hey Mason, how are you, man? You got your own phone? Holy cow, how awesome is that? Well, it's good to see you. I hope you're doing all right. Tell your sister and your parents we said hello. Okay, so you got that for some new decor and a baby grand. It's like I'm assuming it's the one that's like
yeah.
I don't know what kind of shape you call that, but okay. So have you had piano before?
As an elective. I needed a college elective and I took a class.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. Any other instruments you play?
Played trumpet in the 4th grade, and I just bought one of those a few months back.
Oh, you're going to be a one-man band.
Yeah, do something in my retirement.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, in fact, I picked up a used clarinet several months ago from Goodwill because I play clarinet mostly in the band, and so I was like, well, let me pick one up because I had given mine away. So I was like, I'll get another one and just put it in here as a reminder of some of my childhood and youth.
Maybe play it next week.
Yeah, well, I'll be some Benny Goodman. So, okay, you're done with school? Well, that's good. I'm glad that you're not using your school time to be watching us on YouTube. So anyway, Anthony, last week we were talking about several things, and one of those things was concerning like or it had been brought up for us to talk about forgiveness and healing. And so I wanted to get some of your thoughts about forgiveness and healing, and sort of maybe anything that you would encourage from the scripture, or a process of how to deal with forgiveness and healing. Maybe you've got some insights on that for us.
I've had to do some of that myself, and many times in life. We all go through a point, time in our lives where we need to forgive people for some kind of infraction or injustice they have done against us. But what I would say as far as forgiveness and healing is that I think you have to face it. A lot of people try to avoid it, but at the same time they hold on to it, and they never. There's no resolve, and they hold a grudge against the person who did something to them or towards them. And it's not a good thing to hold on to it. It's like a cancer, actually. And sometimes you're doing that, and the person who you need to forgive may not even be aware of it. I've seen that lots of times where they're just living their life, and the other person I've seen people go the long way around just to avoid crossing someone's path.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And but then they see every time they see the person, they get angry or they get bitter, and that's why I say it's like a cancer, and it keeps eating at that person. And to forgive a person, I mean, you forget about what happened, but you stop holding grudges, because that's why I said last week that forgiveness is for you and not for them,
Hmm.
because you are the one that is impacting. You're the one that is affecting. And it's biblical that we should forgive everyone. It says that if we don't forgive others, then our Father in heaven will not forgive us. And that alone is a reason to forgive,
Hmm.
because we
Right.
all want God to forgive us for the minor things for the many things that we do, but we can't forgive others for the minor things that they do. And we turn it into big things.
Yeah.
And then, and there's another thing I think people have the most problem with, and that's forgiving themselves.
Hmm.
A lot of people think that they've done something and it's so bad that not even God will forgive them for it. And a lot of people, cannot get back to normality because they're constantly beating themselves up
Hmm.
over something that they did. They feel sorry for what they did, or just feel really bad. But the same as forgiving someone else, you forgive yourself and move on. You may never forget the incident that caused you to feel that way, but you have to change your focus.
Hmm.
And that's how depression comes on.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good. One of the things that comes to my mind when I think about forgiveness is, and healing, because I do think those things go together. But I think one of the issues or challenges for us as humans is to understand that forgiveness can be immediate, but healing is a process, right?
Different from
And
every person.
And right, it is different for every person. Just like physically, it takes some people longer to heal than others, from a cut or a scrape or whatever. I mean, the same thing is true emotionally or mentally, that some people may be able to move on a little bit faster, but there's a process to healing, and you can't rush it. It's like you can't rush. I mean, when you get a cut or a scrape or whatever, I can put some Neosporin on your triple antibiotic, and maybe that's going to speed the process up a little bit. But really, when it comes to these other deep, cuts and wounds in our souls or our spirit, I think we do an extreme disservice when we try to come back too quickly from those things. It doesn't mean that we haven't forgiven. It just means the process of healing needs to take place. And so I think sometimes people get confused because they think if I have forgiven somebody, then I should be over it. Not necessarily.
Right.
Okay, you can forgive. That means that you're not holding anything against that person. But to heal from it, it doesn't mean that you have to open yourself back up to that person to be hurt again, at least not immediately, because you still have to heal from it. And so I think sometimes we kind of get that mixed up, and we think, wow, if I've forgiven someone, then I should be over it. And that's not true. I think we have to allow ourselves a process of healing. And sometimes that could take, much longer than we ever anticipated. There are some injuries, that maybe we have as, young adults, like we are, that, we might get hurt now, but younger, we would have recovered much quickly than we would now. And so rushing into another scenario of, if we hurt our knee and we go back, a week later and try to play basketball again, it's probably not a smart thing.
Right. You could re-injure yourself or reopen the wound. I split my thumb open, and it hurt for about a week. It was bleeding for about a week. It just stayed open. Then it started to heal. And then I went back into the yard, do some yard work, and hit it on the wheelbarrow, and it popped open again.
Back open.
Yeah, and it was worse than the first time.
Wow, yeah.
I should have taken my time, and as far as protecting this.
Right. And I think sometimes we feel like we're wrong if we're trying to protect ourselves from, further injury, but that's not necessarily wrong for us to do. The Bible says for us to guard our hearts. Right. We guard our hearts because it's the wellspring of life. If we're not watching over our heart or watching over injuries or things that are tender for us, it doesn't mean that we haven't forgiven. It just means we haven't healed yet. And so forgiveness can be immediate, but healing can take a while. It can be a process. So that would be, one of the things that I would say concerning healing and forgiveness. Give yourself some time to get over something, and then, as Anthony was saying about forgiving ourselves and healing from that. This is one of the reasons why it's so important to be careful of sin, because when we sin, we end up. Let me turn off my phone. Whenever we sin, what we do is we open ourselves up for the enemy to use that against us and remind us. And so even though we may confess it and be forgiven from the Lord, what happens is the enemy is trying to use these things again to drag us down and make us feel like we're not forgiven, which is not the case. We are forgiven. We're just not maybe healed from the sin, right? So that would be just some things that I would say concerning healing and forgiveness. I know that some of you are part of our family groups, and last night we were doing a session on race and the gospel. And last night was a particular topic was hostility, and it had a lot to deal with the police and how police interact with all of us, but in particular with the African American demographic. And so I wanted to get some of your thoughts and opinions about that session and what your thoughts were concerning some of those comments that were made throughout, and maybe share that with everyone here.
I know that one of the questions was asked, Al asked if anyone on the call had a run-in where they felt as though they were harassed by the police. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that all the African American, all the Black people raised their hand, and some of the Caucasian white people, Caucasian, white, Black, African American.
Yeah.
I don't
Too
know.
many titles.
I'm not political.
Yeah.
But a few of us raised our hand because a lot of people had encounters. There was a policeman, a former policeman on the call, and even he talked about times where he was harassed as a policeman by the other policemen. We talked about, I think one of the things when was the first time that we had a hostile racial encounter. Mm-hmm. And I know I mentioned it was an eye-opening experience for me during the OJ trial. And then again, when Barack Obama became president, mm-hmm. and then how we begin to see sides of people that we have not seen. They are people who were my friend. I saw a side of them that I'd never seen before. Mm-hmm. And then again, with Trump presidency, I see it, and I've seen it from both sides, from the Black and the white perspective, and Hispanic as well. I've seen it from both sides. And back in history, back when I was younger, and even today, so it's still out there. And the question was, how do we deal with it as Christians? How do we react or respond mm-hmm. to it? And still, we shouldn't look at the outer man. We just need to look at the heart. That's what God looks at, the mm-hmm. inner man. Mm-hmm. And that's how we should do it and not participate in it.
Right.
And we address it by just speaking on love. Mm-hmm. Just talk about loving everyone, love thy neighbor, no matter who they are.
Right. Yeah. And in the context of dealing with like the police and hostility there, I mean, I think we would all agree that it's not just one demographic that is bad, so it's like we can't just say all cops are bad, right? And there's in anything, there's going to be good people or bad people. There's going to be, some, and maybe they're Caucasian, or maybe they're, African American, or maybe they're Latino. It doesn't really matter. I mean, to me, it's not an issue of skin color. It's an issue of good or bad, mm-hmm. right? It's you're either good or you're bad. And skin color really doesn't have anything to do with it. However, to say that the African American community hasn't had it tougher when it comes to maybe some of those things. I've never, and I have a lot of Black friends, but and grew up with a lot of Black friends in high school and things like that. But I never heard any of them ever talk about, the talk or I never heard anyone ever say anything to me about that. So, hearing about those kind of things are kind of new in that respect for me. Not to say that I think it would be good for every family to have that conversation with their children, right?
Especially now.
Right, exactly. But it may have started with the African American community because of the different hostilities or the different ways that they were being treated or are treated whenever they're pulled over or stopped. But I do think that it does require us to have these kind of conversations with one another because there are a lot of things that maybe I don't understand or others don't understand. And I think the whole thing about all of this is being able to come to the table with a spirit of humility and being able to say, I'm here to learn. I'm not here to say that your experience is right or wrong. It's your experience, and it's for me to say, well, okay, then help me understand where you're coming from. Help me understand what it's like, for you and your community or you and your family, because I don't know, and a lot of people don't know.
In that talk, I mean, the main thing is to be compliant. I know a lot of young people, not just young people, a lot of people are militant. They get pulled over.
Right.
They want to grab their phone and just think they can say whatever because there are videos out there where you see people being defiant and getting away with talking to the police. They want to quote these laws and things and say, I know my rights and all those things. But you can't, that won't work with every policeman that you encounter. I mean, I've had so many encounters with them, it's not funny. I'm pulled over so much for mistaken identity, but I just stay compliant and stay polite, and it'll pass, and then you're over. But when you start arguing with them, I had guns drawn on me and stuff, so I just take my time. I say, I'm reaching in here, my glove compartment for this, and just step by step. And some people say, "Oh, you're a punk for doing it, that." I say, well, I'm alive.
Right.
I'm alive, punk.
Well, and I think, the challenge with any of that is, you've got to keep a cool, level head, regardless of what situation we're in. You make better decisions when you're not angry.
Right.
Right. But on the flip side of that, not feeling or not being feeling like you're being targeted or you're being, stereotyped or profiled or, whatever is difficult to not accept, and to be able to say, okay, let me just remain calm, in the situation. And I do think you're right that if people are able to remain calm, it can diffuse a situation better. And so one of the things that was brought up in the conversation in the video as well as within our group and probably within yours was about defunding the police. Did anybody discuss that with your group last night?
We didn't cover that topic.
Okay.
No, not last night. We didn't cover that one.
One of the things that was discussed in our group about defunding the police was, or dealing with the police is that they have so many things that they're responsible for. And the video kind of covered that, about how, if somebody's cat is in a tree, who's getting called? It's not Ghostbusters, right? It's the police.
Oh, it's the fire department.
Yeah, that's what I said too. I was like, it's the fire department's getting called. But nonetheless, the police probably get called on a lot of different things that maybe some other group or some other organization could handle.
Right.
That the police shouldn't be responsible for all of this stuff.
Right.
And yet maybe they are called for all of these things because maybe the funding already isn't there, for other groups to even be around to handle this stuff. But I do think some of it comes through maybe the operators need to channel things to different, places better or something like that would help. I don't necessarily believe defunding the police is what I think we need the police, quite honestly. And I believe that the police, do a great job and service to our communities. And sure, we have folks that maybe aren't always the best in these jobs, and maybe more training will help with that, or maybe more education.
I think they need training.
Yeah, will help with that. But I don't think that it's. I've heard people mention having like counselors or having social workers, handling some of these kind of issues. Domestic violence or something like that. I'm like, I just don't see that
Because
as
they can
being,
turn for the work.
yeah, I don't see that
on a
being
dime.
a viable option.
Mhm.
And I do think that police are trained to handle a lot of high, intense, stressful situations. And as was covered in the video last night too, they're having to make decisions, split-second decisions that are life or death, life altering.
Yeah.
And I believe that because of that, it's important for all of us to remember that the role and the job that they have as police officers is one that I mean, quite honestly, I wouldn't want to be in that situation every day,
Right.
where you're having to make life or death, or feeling like you could be called upon to make life or death decisions at any time, and living with that kind of stress load continually, I'm sure is very difficult to deal with.
I can relate. I grew up in a police household. My father was a policeman,
Okay.
and so I watched some of the. He used to talk about he didn't talk about everything, but I mean, he's even killed a person before. He was cleared,
Oh wow.
but it was just it was hard for him.
I'm sure.
And so I think he went to counseling after that. But then he just talked about some of the crime scenes, not in detail, but it's just what he had to experience. It's like being a soldier,
Right. Yeah.
and the vet, we get all these benefits, but police there, but a lot of police, they don't even get to experience a lot of violence, so it's not an everyday thing. But when it does happen, a lot of them are used to it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and and I'll say this too, as far as the military, I was looking up last night, what the average salary, for police officers here in Georgia. It's like, I think they're making on average like $20 an hour, something like that. And you think about that. Okay, $20 an hour, you're putting your life on the line. It's like, is it, and so when we talk about defunding the police, I'm thinking, man, we probably need to increase, that. And even with the military, you talk about things that I'm sure you experience things in the military that, you wouldn't want anyone to experience.
Never been in combat.
Well, that's good. That's good. But
I saw more gunfire and stuff growing up in the
hood. But when you think about like the benefits, and I'm sure my dad's a disabled vet too. But when you think about, okay, here's stuff that is promised to you because of your service, right? And yet there's still a lot of hoops you got to jump through to get those benefits. And not those same benefits are afforded to police officers. Right. And yet, here they are every day having to put their lives on the line, that kind of thing. And so I think it's, really noble what they do and how they serve us. And again, I think that most of them are really, really good people who desire to do the right things. And so I think they end up getting, a bad rap a lot of times because of one or two bad things.
I think the media is the cause of that, how people view the police. Because, they're always, on the front. And when you wake up in the morning, if there's a shooting, that's going to be the first thing that you see. Yeah. And then they're gonna rehash it over and over.
Yeah.
And over.
Yeah. The best thing to do is after you see the morning news, turn it off. You don't need to hear it, the same thing every 5 minutes. What was the other thing I was just thinking about? Oh my goodness, it slipped my mind. We were talking about defunding the police, and it's going now. Anyway, Katrina, thanks for chiming in there. It's good to see you, and the rest of you, thanks for hanging out with us today. And I'll wrap it up with this as we, are thinking about a lot of different things here with hot topics and things like that in our society. Race in the gospel is a big one, and prejudice and bigotry and all these kind of things have been super huge hot topics lately. What kind of or have you experienced a lot of racism yourself growing up, or
growing up, but not not so much these days,
Hmm.
but high school. I was
Okay.
bused across Atlanta. It was Northside High School, and so I lived uh, near Harper High School. It was all black. It's a black community, and I was bused over. My parents wanted me and my sisters to get a better education, and so that's why they did that. And I'm glad. I'm thankful for it. I hated it when they told me I had to do it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do it. It was a different environment because the school is located. I think it's North Atlanta is what it's called now, but the school is located in the area. Mansions, big homes, and I've never seen those before until then, high school.
Right.
Well, middle school. That's when we was first bused over, and it was a culture shock to me because I hadn't seen that many white people up close and personal,
Right.
and I learned a lot, and that was prejudice, not from me. I've never hated anyone because of just who they are, or because they're black or white or anything. But I've seen a lot of that because people who came from lower class communities to that community, and I saw them in all the cars that they were driving and the type of clothes they were wearing. It was different from mine, and but I saw a lot of racism in that. And then when I joined the military, the same thing. But I was used to it by then. But I met a lot of other people. I had a roommate, and he said that he had never seen a black person until he joined the Marine Corps. I'm like, how did that happen? He said, not in person.
Wow.
I don't know where he lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so it was exactly, and I saw it. But the thing was that I never engaged in it. I never participated in it. And if it was toward me, I guess I let it roll off my shoulder. I didn't start a fight because someone called me the N-word or anything like that.
Right.
I didn't back down, but I didn't because I didn't blow up the situation.
Right. There was you didn't respond with inflammatory.
No one physically harmed me.
Right. Okay. I remember now what I was thinking about earlier was the whole idea of respect. I think that a lot of people have hostility maybe towards police or towards anyone really in a position because of a lack of respect in our whole country. I think we don't respect the office of the presidency like we used to. We don't respect our elders like we used to. We don't respect teachers, like we used to. We don't respect our parents like we used to. And I think this has all been a trickle down. And I think, when it comes to like police, when you're getting stopped, because maybe you have done something wrong, but you don't have respect for them. So it's like, well, you're not going to tell me what to do. You're not gonna keep me from doing what I want to do. And I think that aggravates and causes these situations to be inflammatory, and it ends up becoming something that it really didn't need to be, which goes back to, I think, just a lack of respect altogether. When you look at the Bible and what the Bible teaches us, it teaches us to respect our elders. It teaches us to respect those who are in government and in leadership over us. And I believe that, the more respect we have for God, what is it? Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Right. And so I was thinking about that the other day and that verse, and it's like, why does it say, that it's the beginning of wisdom to fear the Lord? Because ultimately, if you're not having if you're not having reverence for any of these other people that are around you, then you certainly don't have reverence for God. And if you don't have reverence for God, then that's a really stupid thing, right? He says this is the beginning of wisdom. So it's kind of like we've taken God out of the picture, and it's affected everything else in our lives. There's no respect for anybody or anything because we ultimately don't want God telling us how to live our lives. And I think that's very problematic for most people, especially those who are not followers of Jesus. I think even for those of us who follow Jesus at times find ourselves at war with God sometimes with, hey, I don't want to do that, or I don't want to do this. And we can be at odds with God. And so to wrap up today, thank you all for again joining us. And if you've got any questions or something that you'd like for us to talk about next week, you can throw it up in the chat, and we'll see what we can do to address any of that. But as we wrap up today, Anthony, what would you, or do you have any suggestions or thoughts about what maybe we can do to help bridge the gap, the racism gap, or the lack of understanding that seems to be evident among our nation? What are some small steps maybe that churches can take? Have you experienced anything that you feel like has worked for some churches when it comes to bridging the gap?
The main thing is to have discussions about it.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't ignore it and allow the media and the social media also to dictate or to take the lead in teaching our community about racism, because the view, especially if it's not from a Christian perspective,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be the right discussion.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that it's the church responsibility to use the word of God to talk about how we should treat people,
Mm-hmm.
and to see people as men and women, children of God,
Mm-hmm.
and not so much look at what we have in common and not so much what we don't have in common.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we just fear what we don't know and what we don't understand. For the perception based off race, a person, I see a Muslim and how they're dressed, and automatically there's a fear, or
Mm-hmm.
because there's no understanding
Right.
on just about them. Only a lot of times we only know about them what the media tells us.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with each race. And so you got to get to know the person individually. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't judge them based off a perceived notion of that person. You get to know that person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's be the Christian. Be the Christian that you're supposed to be. And situations, racial situation or hostile situations, you can eliminate that from the start.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just be kind to people, love people.
Well, yeah, exactly. And, in Ephesians, where they're taking this study through, last night he was talking about how Jesus has torn down the hostility,
Mm-hmm.
that was there between us and God.
Right.
And when you think about, that word hostility, it's like, okay, if you're feeling hostile towards someone else, I think you really need to look and say, where does that hostility come from? And
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're a follower of Jesus, right? If God has already taken down the hostility, then, there should not be any hostility between us and other people. And if there is, there's a problem between us and God, because ultimately, we can't be right with God and be at odds with other people.
Yeah.
That's
supposed to be Christ-like.
Right. And so if we've got hostility towards someone else, or toward another people group, or toward another race, then that means we've got a problem with God, because God and Jesus died for every race, for every person that has ever lived, and He loves every person and every nation, tribe, language, and they're going to be representatives of every nation, tribe, language in heaven. And so for us, if there's a problem with hostility towards another group of people, that is not on that group. That is on us,
Right.
Individually.
And God, when He sees it, He don't see black, He don't see white, He don't see Democratic, He doesn't see Republican. God sees righteous.
Mm-hmm.
And righteousness and the wicked. That's what He's going to see.
Yeah, He sees, my child or not my child, right? And so for us, especially if we're going to represent God well in this world, it's really important for us to be making every effort to demonstrate that kind of, in fact, we've been called reconcilers, in the scripture. And so if we are not actively seeking to reconcile one another and reconcile people to God, then we're missing out on what God has ultimately called us to do, why the church is here.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in on George's Jungle. Thank you, Anthony, for a good conversation. And we will see you guys next week at 2:00.